Okay. Good morning.
Good morning, Robert.
Welcome to Unity Spiritual Center, Pflugerville. Because we're in Pflugerville and Round Rock and Hutto and all those places, even Cedar Park, right? So thank you for being here. Our topic today is who do you listen to, or who do we listen to? And the idea behind that is we're getting more and more sources of people that are experts. And we are connected more and more. In our house, and I know some of your houses, you even have Alexa. And Alexa is just this fountain of information. So everybody has an opinion. All we have to do is ask Alexa and we get a detailed explanation. Anybody have an Alexa in their house? Some of you do? Okay, jeez. Anyway, the leading edge technology is changing the world. And what it's doing is giving us more and more experts telling us the way we should act, what we should do, how life works. And we have more reasons to create fear, uncertainty, and doubt, if that makes any sense. Because, you know, it's like the loudest voice in our head is the ego telling us not to do something or go ahead and do it. And the problem with the ego's voice is that it wants to keep the status quo. And things in the world are changing faster than they ever have. Stop and think about what's happening. I don't know about you, but I shouldn't do this, but I bring out my age, but I remember brick phones. Anybody have a brick phone? Okay. Now, they tell me that in that cell phone that we have today, there's more computing power in that little cell phone than there was in the computers that took man to the moon. Do you understand what that says? So we have access in a funny little thing that years ago we had to have a big brick, and that was breakthrough, believe me. It was a big deal to have a brick phone. I can remember we were living in Spokane, Washington, of all places, and in Spokane, Washington, we had a cell phone put in the car because I had to have a cell phone. And I can remember calling my mother. We were driving from Spokane to Seattle, and I called my mother, who lived in Westchester, Pennsylvania at the time, and it was like, wow, what a deal. And we didn't even think about it today, agree? It's instantaneous. We don't even have to worry about area codes anymore because everybody keeps moving around. So it's like our area code in our cell phones is area code 903, which is North Texas. And everybody's mixed up, all kinds of things changing. Anybody understand the driverless cars thing? And you might not like it, but guess what's coming? Okay, here's an interesting idea. I don't know an exact figure, but I understand there's 200,000 or 300,000 truck drivers being employed in the United States. Do you know what's coming in the future? Automated truck drivers. So all of a sudden, 200,000 or 300,000 or 400,000 people are going to be out of work. Artificial intelligence is changing everything. My good friend over here, who has been in psychology for years, we were talking about a computer is going to be able to diagnose all these things. Because all you have to do is put information in, and it'll give you a diagnosis. Do you understand that? Do you understand what is happening? And more people are telling us what we should be doing. That's what's been happening to me. I should be doing this, and I should be doing that. Now, I'm not saying it's not wrong. I'm just saying, where does our source of information come from, and who do we listen to, and who do we make decisions about? And it's an interesting idea, and there's more and more interconnectedness, okay? And there's more and more opinions being floated at us. Recently, we changed TVs. Madeline's birthday, you know, so we bought a smart TV. Okay, now, I didn't know what a smart TV was. But all of a sudden, there's, a couple 100,000 channels of TV available, and there's every cotton-picking opinion you could look at. And everybody has their own site, and everybody has their own agenda. And politically, everybody has their own agenda, and they're piping it at me all the time. So again, who do you listen to? And whose ideas do you take in? And who's the expert that tells me what's best for me? Interesting question. And the problem is we don't know it's happening. It happens a drip, 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 drip at a time, a little bit at a time. And that's what's happening out there. Do you understand what advertising is? In other words, they know that if they give you, I think it's 13 or 14 impressions or times that you should do this, that you will automatically start believing that and acting out of that. So if somebody tells you that you need their underarm deodorant, so you're sexy or whatever it is, sooner or later you accept that as reality. So what is real and what is truth? Interesting question, and it really is. So where are we going and what are we doing, who are we doing, who are we going to listen to? And that's the big issue, because when we make decisions, anybody ever agree there's this voice that starts screaming in your ear? It's like, trying to think of an example recently, but it's like, you go to do something, let's talk about the church. We have said we are going to build a church on that lot down there, and we're going to do it debt-free. And the world has said, no, you can't do that. Well, I've had people go nuts. I've had people tell me, well, we got to go borrow money. Okay, if you want to believe that. And the kingdom of heaven is where? It's within. So the voice that I need to listen to is the voice of spirit, not the voice of the ego. Because the ego has taken in all of the conversation from the world, and very slowly over a period of times, we have developed a mindset that the ego keeps pumping into our brain. And is it simple? No, it's really sneaky, okay? So I'd like to look at this. Very interesting conversation. I need to pull this over. And the idea here is, I was using John 3:16. Now, some of you might think, oh my God, that's one of the fundamentalists. Yeah. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Okay? And, well, wait a minute, let's look at this. The revealing word, which is the Unity, let's call it dictionary, has a very interesting conversation about world. So the word world in that context, in its metaphysical or spiritual meaning, is completely different than the world's explanation. So let's take a look. Okay? Now, reading from The Revealing Word by Charles Fillmore. Okay? The world. It says, the world, a state of consciousness formed through the belief in the reality of things external. It leads one to follow standards of living based on man's opinion rather than God's opinion. So the world is what we've been programmed to believe. And how's it working for us? Okay? So we make up these stories, and the world makes up these stories. We take the stories in, and then we act out those stories. Because that's the way it is. Anybody ever agree? Sometimes I cringe when I say, well, we've done it that way for years. Agree? And that's the way it is. And don't what is it? Don't create it.
Don't rock the boat.
Don't rock the boat. Don't expect to. See, all these conversations have become so inherent within us. We have forgotten to listen to the Spirit. And the still small voice is very, very small. So it's up to us to cultivate that. But I'm going to read some more here. And it says, a state of consciousness formed through the belief in the reality of things. The world is overcome by our denying that it has any power over us and affirming freedom in Christ. Okay? So the world is the program belief, and within us is the Christ. Now, the next part of that is the only begotten Son. So I want to read Son of God, what that means spiritually. And again, we're going to be in the revealing word. So it says the Son of God. It says the true spiritual self of every individual. See, deep within us, and we know it, everybody knows it inherently. I want to say even atheists, there's a root belief deep inside, we call it at the soul level, that knows God is there and that I have a perfect pattern within myself. In the kahuna or the kahuna areas, it goes back to the origin or the beginning of time. And this says, Son of God, the fullness of the perfectness idea in divine mind. The living word, the Christ idea in the mind of God, is the Son of God. So if you take that and look at it, it says, for God so loved the world, or all of our conditioned beliefs, that he gave us his only begotten Son, which is the Christ. So it isn't just one individual, it's all of us. And each one of us is the Christ and is the Son of God that's been talked about here. So if that's true, then what do we have access to? It's very interesting. Again, when I start putting things together, I'm led to pick up certain books. Any of you have ever been in our house, I got books everywhere. Okay? And this is from Eric Butterworth and Spiritual Economics, which we have studied. It says the whole universe of innate substance is centered in you. So what that means is everything in the universe is centered in you. So you, us'uns, all of us, are the center of the universe, which means the universe is present within you. Okay, I want to take a minute and let that sink in. You are not a guilty individual full of sin. You're God in expression. You are the center of the universe. And in meditation, I've been thinking about that. In the center of the universe, if you can see yourself as the center of the universe, one of the techniques in some of the transport that we have done in the past is just to float out and see yourself as an individual speck of energy floating in the universe. Because see, this body we have to put together. And we put this body together to come into the physical world. And we made all those decisions before we came in, what type of body we would come into. Now, I didn't expect the body to have a heart attack, but it did. So it's almost like a outside issue, because inside I'm still the Christ. You're the Christ. And then he goes on and says, and this centering, as far as God is concerned, is the same in all persons. This leads to the inescapable thought that the universe was no more centered in Jesus than it is in you. And Jesus said, these things I do, ye shall do, and even greater things. So there is within us a voice that gives us what we need to do. What we need to do is go into silence, spend time in meditation. We really have to sometimes isolate ourselves. It's interesting to me that the meditation is now becoming more popular. It's being, they're teaching mindfulness, they're doing all this kind of stuff. And it's to slow us down, to minimize stress. But the truth is, eventually we reach the point where it's still a small voice, it gets louder in our head. So it's a period of time. It takes work, it takes time to change my consciousness from the world's consciousness to God consciousness. Did everybody get that? And it says it right here. It's very, very interesting. That leads us to the inescapable thought that we are the same as Jesus. Now I need to read, if I'm going to be honest, I need to read on. That doesn't explain the quite obvious difference between Jesus and us. Okay? However, it goes on and says, okay, in his consciousness was centered in the source, or God, while we are usually centered in various levels of limitation. And what is the domain of the ego? Limitation. You can't do it. That's crazy. My God, what do you think you can do? You can't do that. Nobody's done it before. Which is the limiting ideas of spirit. Now, it's amazing thing, absolutely. Because I sit there a lot of times. Right now, everybody's being very careful around me, okay? At home, I'm only allowed to do certain things. And I notice when I walk in, everybody's kind of, is he going to be okay? And it's interesting, it really is. And of course, I've gotten used to being pampered. And I admit that I've been aware that Madeline does everything and I'm allowing her to do everything. So it's kind of interesting to look at that voice in my head that got used to being taken care of because I couldn't do it. And you see, we have that limiting belief, I can't do that because I never knew how to do it. So these limiting beliefs we have are real, not in the spiritual terms, but in the world's terms, which are conditioned beliefs by the ego and the world around us. Now, do I believe? It's like Jesus said, these things I do, you shall do, and even greater things. And what are some of the things he did? He walked on water, yes. Now, when we lived up in near Spokane, Washington, we lived on a lake, and the lake froze over. Okay, so you could go walk on the water. Okay, so can you stretch that? Yeah, you can. But what would it be like to walk on water? What else did Jesus do? He manifested money.
Raised the dead.
He what?
Raised the dead.
Raised the dead.
Sure. Water to wine.
Water to wine. Wow, the big one. Water to wine.
Fed the multitudes of people.
Huh?
Fed the multitude.
Fed the multitudes. All they did was keep breaking that fish apart. And everybody's been trying to explain how that happened. Do you know that there's even archaeologists or some people that have said, well, there was a guy with a cart that showed up with the extra fish? There's all kinds of things because it seems impossible. And see, here's the key. I'm gonna go out on a limb. Everybody ready? What has happened is Jesus manifested the Christ. Jesus said, here's what I have done. And he was our big brother showing us the way. And because it seems impossible, over the years we have deified him, which put him outside of us. And we could never do that because he is of God. And we even made up this story about the triune God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And they're all one. But Jesus said, these things I do, ye shall do, and even greater things. Now that's almost heresy. But that's what Jesus was saying. Why was he crucified? Because he said, I am a representative of God. And we're sitting here saying that you are expressing God. So it's interesting, isn't it? It's really so far beyond our beliefs. And what I'm attempting to do is for myself and for usins that you're an expression of God. And what is the centering is where do you believe you are? How do you fit in? There's more to this. I'm saying that we're entering a new era. That new era is the energies are changing. The energies are increasing no matter what. The scientists tell us that change is occurring. And would you agree? You look around. I think about the changes that have occurred just in my life in the last 5, 6, 10 years. Anybody else think of a change? Even the type of houses we move into. There's this change. We all went to bigger houses and now we're downsizing. Yes? And there's this constant need for change. And where does that come from? Judge Troward said, Spirit is always for growth and expansion. So the expansion has to occur from us. And I would like to share in this idea. If you go to 2 Corinthians 5:17. You ready? Now this is Paul. And speaking, it depends on where you put Paul in the context of history. But I believe he was a true spiritual teacher. And he said, therefore, if any person be in Christ, which is saying what you are, we just had Jesus' words. If any person be in Christ, he is a new creation. In other words, once you take in the Christ and start living from the spiritual context, things have changed. So we can build that church automatically. Okay, maybe we can learn to walk on water. I'm not saying we are. I'm not making any claims. All I'm saying is what's possible of us as human beings. And if we are rebirthing a new environment, if I can use that terminology. Everybody wants peace, everybody wants love, everybody wants, but how do you do that? You bring those ideas into the conversation. And then it goes on and says, old things are passed away. So the old beliefs, the old negative beliefs of the ego have to be released. Anybody understand? Anybody have a drawer where you collect old things? Someday I might need them. We have a garage full of stuff. Anybody else? Okay. Might need that. Might. Okay. And I gotta get rid of it. It's really fun. It really is. Because we want to hang on to the past. Because I might need that someday. Or I have sentimental reasons. Now, there's a lot of things that I'm sentimental about that I don't want to recreate. Okay? And a lot of events that have occurred. And I just as soon leave them in the past. And that's what Paul is saying here. He is saying, old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. Why? Because I'm creating new. I'm creating differently. I'm creating from the Christ mind rather than the ego mind. Okay? And I'm going to leave it right there because I don't know about you, but it's time to change. I'm clear that the event I've been through, which is called a heart attack, was to realign myself with spirit. It's kind of like anybody, it's kind of like it's time to listen and create a new life. And I am learning to create from spirit rather than the ego. And the ego is fighting that, okay? Once it knows that you're on the path, every little thing you can think of, you know, all those little areas that are weak on, they have a tendency to amplify. And the truth is, all there is God, there isn't anything else. And we are the expressions of God, here to do God's work. So thank you for listening. This, as you can tell, this whole morning is kind of new ideas for me. But it's old ideas that are present in today's conversation. I love you dearly. Look around you. I insist that we're sitting with 100 to 120 people. I insist that church is built down there and that we're making a difference in the environment. And a lot of you are leaders of tomorrow. A lot of you are creating a new world. And it's up to us to hold that belief until it manifests. So thank you very much. I'm done. Thank you.